As the diplomatic rift between India and Canada widens, the Canadian Defence Minister Bill Blair has described the country's relations with India as significant and crucial, reiterating that the Canadian government will continue to pursue partnerships, including the Indo-Pacific strategy. However, in a conversation with a local television channel, Blair also said that Canada has a responsibility to make sure they conduct a thorough investigation. Meanwhile, sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the Indian government may cancel registration of overseas citizenship of OCI cardholders that are involved in pro-Khalistani activities. India's National Investigation Agency is also looking to seize properties of fugitive Khalistani terrorists. A report by New York Times has suggested that US officials provided intelligence to Canada that helped the country pose credible allegations against the Indian government. The report has also said that the intercepts were then gathered by the Canadian government. Remember, while the Indian government has halted visa services to Canadian citizens, the Canadian government has not stopped processing visas for Indians as of yet. Let's listen in to Bill Blair. All right, to take this discussion forward, I'm now joined by Ambassador Navdeep Suri, Distinguished Fellow at Observer Research Foundation and former diplomat, Ambassador Veena Sikri as well. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Ambassador Suri, let me begin by speaking to you about these allegations that have now come in. The US ambassador to Canada confirming that it was Five Eyes intelligence that helped Canada come to this conclusion. How do you think the G7 is going to take this? And does this put India into a difficult situation?
Firstly, Parikshit, it's not a G7 issue. If anything, it's the Five Eyes, which is not the G7. Yes, they do share intelligence. And I would presume that as India, as a country which has a good relationship with 4 of the 5 members of the Five Eyes, they would also share with our intelligence agencies, not the methods, but certainly the outcomes of what they've picked up, so that there is a level of confidence on our side. As of now, we have strenuously denied that they have shared anything substantive with us. And I think we will leave it at that unless they share something that is persuasive. Right now, what you are seeing is a mix of leaks and innuendo and the occasional sort of attributable to sources kind of a report. What is coming out from official journals themselves is fairly scarce in terms of any kind of substance that it might carry.
Right. Ambassador Sikri, how do you see the approach of the Canadian government after the foreign minister, after Justin Trudeau had made those statements? We see regular reports in the Canadian media about this issue. It seems that the Canadian side wants to pursue this aggressively. To what extent will Canada want to take this? Do you see a way out?
First of all, the credibility of the Canadian government is right now at an all-time low. We've seen, for example, that even in the Canadian Parliament, he's being excoriated. Justin Trudeau is being excoriated by the leader of the opposition, the Conservative Party, and even the Premier of British Columbia, who in fact said that Prime Minister Trudeau had called him before making the statement in Parliament last Monday and had sent the Director of Canadian Intelligence Services to meet him. He said, I got no evidence. I got something that was just on the Google available to everybody. So I think that, the Indian government has been absolutely correct, even if, as a statement made by Justin Trudeau just thrown out last week, even if he says that he gave some information weeks ago, it's clear that the Indian government has examined and rejected this evidence. And that is why last Monday, when Prime Minister Trudeau made his statement in Parliament about credible allegations, who ever heard of that phrase before, after that, the government of India called these absurd and motivated statements and said that we reject any such action by India, we reject any such allegations, and there's no evidence at all. So I think after that, it's clear that the defense minister seems to be trying to recover ground, saying, no, we're going to pursue the relationship with India. I think that Prime Minister Trudeau is in a very difficult situation back home, but India has kept quiet. India is now quiet, meaning clearly they reject any allegation. After the first statement, India India is now quiet. Our foreign minister is in New York. He's going to be in Washington in a day or so. And I think after that, the discussions will continue, and we should not have any doubts in our mind that the Canadian government has done this for their own internal political reasons, and that's backfired on him spectacularly. So I do not see that this will continue. I think the Canadian government is going to try and recover lost ground, and I see the defense minister, the Canadian defense minister statement in that light.
All right. Let me go across to Ambassador Suri once again. Ambassador Suri, we're now getting reports that the Indian government, the MHA, is actually considering cancelling the registration of certain OCI card holders who are responsible or who were involved in pro-Khalistani protests or pro-Khalistani activities against India. How do you see this move?
I think it's important that the known offenders, the repeat offenders, don't get away scot-free. And if we have video evidence of those who were responsible for attacking the Indian diplomatic missions, they're desecrating the tricolor, doing some of the other activities that have drawn adverse attention. Now, I think we are within our legitimate right to cancel or review their OCI cards. Because remember, what the OCI card allows persons of Indian origin living overseas is to come to India without any visa at all. And that means that they can come and go, fund various groups and gangs in India, carry out their nefarious activities, and be still below the radar. So I think it's important that the government sends a clear signal that this is not something that you can get away with any longer. So the decision to review the OCI cards and cancel OCI cards of those, and even the targeting of properties of people like Nijar and Pannu that we have seen in the last 48 hours, should send a message to them that we are now not going to sit back and watch and give them a free ride.
Right. Ambassador Sikri, India had asked the Canadian government for parity in diplomatic strength. The Canadian government was asked that they should have equal number of diplomats as India has in Canada and its consulates. We believe that conversation is still ongoing. The Canadian government or the embassy has not given us a sense of how much the staff has been reduced. But they did confirm that the staff is being readjusted in line with threats that are coming in on social media. Can the Canadian side be forced to reduce diplomats?
No, there's no element of forcing here, but there is certainly a very strong element of parity. And the Indian government is fully within its rights to ask that a certain sense of parity be maintained. That is normal in all diplomatic relations. You do see the embassies of the two sides have some kind of parity in their strength. And it is very unusual to find that the Indian High Commission and the consulates in Canada are much smaller than the whole representation of Canada in India. They have not only the High Commission in Delhi, which is fairly large, they have consulates in 3 or 4 cities, and then they have a number of trade missions in something like 8 cities, which is very, very large and unusual indeed. Now, if Canada were to give so much importance to trade relations between India and Canada, I don't see them doing the kind of doing what they have been doing in the last 1 week and before. I mean, we saw that when Prime Minister Trudeau was in India for the G20, he refused to attend the dinner hosted by the President of India. I mean, that's something that is really, really unusual and a very, I would say, a lack of sensitivity to your host government and to diplomatic protocol. And then after that, of course, his plane that could not take off, and the Indian government offered him a plane to go back. He said no, and he just stayed in his room for 2 days. So I think, and then of course, after that, he made this big statement in the Canadian Parliament last Monday. So the Indian government is fully within its rights to A, it has correctly rejected all those allegations, and B, in the face of these allegations, which are so serious and completely out of tune with the diplomatic protocol and the very good relations between India and Canada, the government is now going to review what other steps to take. What you discussed about the OCI card is one such very important step. And I fully agree with Ambassador Navdeep Suri with what he said, that, if the Indian people like Panun and others are going to make these absolutely, terrible statements dividing Hindus and Sikhs and saying Hindus leave Canada. He's not even been reprimanded.
Right.
The Canadian government has not even been called. They're still going on their freedom of speech and freedom of conscience, track. So, I mean, it's completely unheard of. So, Indian government is certainly, they've already taken action in confiscating his properties. And many of these people, as even including Najjar, they had cases against them in India. So many cases, so much illegal activity.
Right.
Red corner notices have been issued by some. Certainly against Najjar, there was a red corner notice, but the government of Canada has been ignoring all this. So if the government of Canada chooses to just ignore the sensitivities of the Indian government, of the Indian people, to ignore what Interpol is saying, then, well, India is fully within its right to take whatever action it deems fit within international law and whatever we like to do.
All right. Ambassador Sikri, we've run out of time, but I'd like to thank you and Ambassador Suri for joining us here on the program. What Bill Blair, the Canadian Defence Minister, has said that, yes, these allegations are important, but they also see the importance of India as a long-term partner in the Indo-Pacific. So let's see how this plays out in the days to come. Ambassador Suri and Veena Sikri, thank you very much for joining us once again. We're taking a short break here on News Center, but coming up, Amazon Web Services has inked a deal with ISRO and InSpace to advance its artificial intelligence capabilities. We bring you a special conversation with the company's head for Asia Pacific, Rahul Sharma, on AWS's expansion plans for India. Stay tuned. Onto a CNBC TV18 exclusive now. Amazon Web Services inked a deal with ISRO and InSpace to advance its artificial intelligence capabilities. The company's head for the Asia-Pacific and Japan region, Rahul Sharma, spoke to Ashmit Kumar on the company's Digital India footprint, its expansion plans and much more.
The journey has been phenomenal. I mean, the way that the India government has set up Digital India as a base for innovation has really been it's been really heartwarming to see the impact that it has brought. And we've been a part of that journey as well. I talked about the fact that CoWIN, helped deliver such a large scale impact, to a positive impact to citizens. Arogya Setu, we were able to build that in a matter of days and deploy. These are all part of the India stack story that we have. If you think about DigiLocker, 6 billion plus documents for credentials that are available for people to be able to put their credentials on, and verified credentials. We were working with the Delhi University on the Samarth platform. And they were able to pull credentials in a matter of, the integration happened in a matter of days between DigiLocker and DU Samarth. So this story, I think, is something that we are excited to be a part of, where these are not only relevant and applicable for India, but they can be taken across to the world. And India truly has the use cases that are scalable, the billions of people and the aspirations of people and the digital technology that exists today, I think is phenomenal. So we are working with multiple partners.
Let me also get a word in as far as space is concerned. That is, I think, on the tip of the tongue of everyone, from the local pawn shop to the Prime Minister. I think everyone is talking about Chandrayaan-3. Give us a sense of the latest MOU that you've signed with InSpace as well as ISRO. Give us more color on that as to what it entails and how AWS seeks to partner in this space race.
Well, space is truly the next frontier here, right? And we've been so excited to have a global space group that works with multiple providers across the world. In India as well, we've all been so heartened about the recent successes that we've had. It requires an ecosystem to come together. It requires skills. There are so many startups that can play in this space. That can work along with ISRO. ISRO needs a lot more capabilities, skills. The endeavor that we have is, if you look at the entire chain for space, it's not just about launching satellites. It's also about how do you get the data in a frugal manner, in a manner that is cost effective, and how do you utilize it in ongoing industries like agriculture and manufacturing, transportation. Our endeavor is to make the end-to-end supply, the chain, successful by ensuring that there are skills available that know this industry, and that we can have startups work in the space. So working with InSpace is going to be building and giving credits and giving capabilities, resources to our space startups, so that they can innovate on AWS. And I think it's going to be it's going to create a collaboration between public-private partnership in space. Truly remarkable going forward.
Well, it's a new frontier. We wish you the best as you dive into the space race. Let's talk numbers now. Let's talk business. You mentioned that there are two regions. There's the Mumbai region, there's the Hyderabad region. We also heard of work being done in the Bangalore and the Chennai region. Can you give us a sense as to how that is panning out? When can we expect them to be commissioned?
Well, we've got local zones across 4 cities in India, and these really provide more capabilities and local low latency offerings. So we've got 4 local zones already in place or coming together in Delhi, in Kolkata, in Bangalore, and in Chennai. And this really augments the capacity that we have with our main regions. The way that we architect AWS, we've had many years of experience architecting the most secure, resilient, scalable cloud that can bring you the best capabilities at the lowest cost. I think that's what's reflected in our architecture overall, and that's what differentiates us from other providers as well, where even within one region, there are multiple availability zones and data centers. And I think that's a unique architecture that we follow that really gives the customer access to very high level of scalability, resilience, and security.
From one exclusive to another, after launching a spree of new products, Lava India aims to be driven by high localization. Speaking to my colleague Ashmit Kumar, Lava's president and business head Sunil Raina said that the company is pushing for contract manufacturing. The company has also welcomed import curbs on laptops, tablets and personal computers.
In the last 3 years, particularly after the geopolitical scenario changed and there have been issues, the acceptance for Indian brands has gone up. You see it in different industries. You see it in cars. You see it in other places. You also see it in. We also feel that there is a increase in the demand for Indian products per se. But having said that, it's not. People are not going to accept any emotional pitch unless and until it is backed by the real product behind it, right? So in every field where the product has delivered, this emotion has actually taken it only higher, right? That's exactly what we are doing. So we have worked very hard on the product for the last 2-3 years on the smartphone side. And because now our products are competitive, our products can compete with the global players. So that's why we're also seeing much higher acceptance than we used to have maybe some time back.
You talk of competition with the global players. One area where you're directly competing with them, of course, is the 5G segment. That's by many phone manufacturers is seen as the next growth driver. You were one of the early movers in the affordable 5G segment. So that's sub 11,000, sub 11,000, 12,000. Now we are seeing increasing competition coming in from the Chinese players as well. Just your sense in terms of, one, 5G as a growth driver, and second, competition from some of these Chinese players in that segment which is seeking to democratize 5G.
The competition is good. In fact, it's very good because when more players come in, the technology becomes more and more accessible to the people and also pushes you to do better, right? But having said that, this segment, which is about 10 to 15,000 rupees segment, is something that we cracked first with our 5G offering, because we have a very clear agenda that we want to make 5G accessible to the masses as early as possible. To the extent that in the next 1 year's time, I see that Lava's entire portfolio will shift to 5G completely, which means 100% of our models will be on 5G completely. So we have taken the lead because we believe this has to become more and more accessible faster. And that's why we were the first in the world actually to bring a 5G smartphone at that price point, right? And we'll keep doing that. We'll keep breaching each price point on the lower side so that it is massified faster.
Do you also have a target in mind as to what you're looking at? You mentioned that there is a great amount of focus that Lava has given on upstream. Is there a strategy that you have or a figure that you would have in terms of what is the target for value addition local here in India? Is there a figure that you're working with or some kind of understanding?
Yeah, so if you see today, there are two things. One is we do 100% manufacturing in India, right? So all our products are manufactured in India. So that's 100% activity. Other activity is the component ecosystem creation. So today, roughly about 40% localization we have already achieved in the smartphones. But then there are these bigger components like you have chipsets, you have memory and other things we still have, maybe a couple of years away. Once that ecosystem also comes in, then we'll be able to do it 100% here in India.
Is there perhaps a policy tweak required? Because like you mentioned, you're the only Indian brand. You would want to, I'm sure, want to see other Indian brands come up as well. Is there a policy tweak required to help perhaps the local domestic ecosystem?
Of course, there are a couple of things that need to be done. One, of course, is on the manufacturing side, which I think the very strong steps that have been taken. The supply chain ecosystem creation in India is also being done to a large extent. Then there is this one area, which is the area of innovation, and which will come from R&D. I think now the next step for the government should be to encourage innovation through R&D activities in India.
Trying to understand and decode some of these policy decisions. One decision that came out recently was the decision to impose import restrictions on laptops, tablets and PCs. I just want to get your sense from a domestic manufacturer standpoint. How are you looking at it? Because the broader industry push seems to be that, look, perhaps not the right time. Maybe push it down the road. Maybe allow for the PLI IT hardware to settle down, give us a year or two. Just want to get your understanding vis-a-vis what the industry has been pushing the government to do.
I think change is always uncomfortable, I would say. But changes are required nevertheless. Sure. I think from my perspective, we missed the previous bus on growing the manufacturing and the other ecosystem in India, and that bus was actually taken by China. Could have been ours at that time, right? But now the pace that we are picking up, there would be some of these inconvenient decisions that will have to be taken, and they're only good for the future. There's, practically speaking, there's never a good time to do something like this. So, but whenever you do it, it will lead to better results, I'm pretty sure. And I think it's a positive development, and it should be encouraged and it should be appreciated, I would say.
Before this conversation began, you had also hinted at some of the other growth vectors that you're looking at. You spoke of acquisitions that you're making in South America. You spoke of the possibility of contract manufacturing. Give us a sense, is this going to be a separate vertical within Lava that we'll see? Are you trying to be perhaps like the Foxconn of India? Is that perhaps the next growth trajectory, growth vector that you have in mind for Lava?
So I think there are clearly two different tracks that we are taking. One is the brand story that we have, and building a brand in India first and then taking it global. And in globally also you have organic means of growth and your inorganic means of growth. You spoke about this company that we acquired with about 21 countries in Latin America, and we are able to cover all those countries through this acquisition that we have done. So that's one route of growing internationally. And then there is the other part, which is the manufacturing facility that we have, the capacity that we have. In fact, in multiple audits, our factory is now a global standard factory, which means any company in the world who wants to do world-class manufacturing, get it outsourced, can come to us, and we'll be able to do that. And we're already doing with some of them. There are two distinct tracks. Like I said, they will run on their own as far as this whole story is concerned.
Fair enough. But is contract manufacturing the next big thing for you? You think that is something that will hold potential?
Yeah, that's I would say significantly big, going to be big for us. I mean, that'll be pretty big for us as well.
You mentioned acquisitions that you're making in South America. Are you also open to the idea of perhaps being acquired by a larger player and to work within the ecosystem of a larger company to grow this brand even further? Is that something perhaps on the cards? Is that something that we can look at in terms of at least being on the table, having a negotiation?
I don't think so. I think we are very, very focused on building a very strong Indian brand which can go global, and that's where our pride lies, and that's what the vision of the company is, to make a real multinational global smartphone brand for the world. So that's what our aspiration is, and we would like to stick to that.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Center. More news and updates continue right here on CNBC TV 18.